To order, please. Ms. Egan, will you take the roll?
Mr. Bouban?
Here.
Mr. Coughlin?
Here.
Mr. Fry?
Here.
Ms. Fitzgibbon? Here. Mr. Jackson?
Here.
Ms. Sword?
Here.
Ms. Hoppy?
Here.
Ms. Patterson?
Here.
Mr. Murphy?
Here.
President Sullivan?
Here. Good evening, everybody. Next on our agenda is public comment. And we have a number of folks here to speak this evening. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people have signed up. I want to briefly go over the rules for public comment. And I will start by reminding everybody that if you want your remarks to be picked up on the system, you need to stay close to the podium and close to the microphone. If you're exceptionally tall or exceptionally short, you can adjust the microphone so it's a good fit for you. Our rules on public comment allow each person to comment for about 3 minutes. I'm not going to be super rigorous about it, but we allot a total of half an hour for public comment. We have 6 folks signed up to speak. I do want to remind everybody of a couple other things. First, that unless the matter is already on the agenda for the evening, the Board of Education cannot take any action or even comment on any issues that are raised because they haven't been properly noticed. So as a president, I can place an item for consideration on a future agenda. I can refer it to a committee. I can refer it to the district administrator or determine that no action is appropriate. I also want to remind folks that policies and laws of the state of Wisconsin, as well as the policies of the board, prohibit public voicing criticism of a board member, a district employee, or of a student. For this reason, and to ensure that board meetings are conducted in an orderly and fair manner, the board will not entertain such discussion during an open session. The proper manner for raising concerns about a board member, a district employee, or a student is outlined in the complaint procedures that have been established by the board. And if there are specific questions you have about that, you are welcome to email either me or Dr. Onsager, and we will direct you to the appropriate place. I have the sign-up sheet here, so I'm just going to call off people in the order that they signed up. So first on the list is Jackie Harris. And Ms. Harris, if you would first let us know your address and tell us what you want to talk about, then you have about 3 minutes to talk about it.
Thank you. Jackie Harris, 2752 Aspen Road here in Stoughton. And I sent a copy of some data and things like that to each of the board members regarding the compensation plan. This weekend I looked through the compensation plan, and while I'm very happy with the direction that the new plan is going, I am still a little concerned about the neglect of paying attention to the commitment of veteran staff. In the past, when I first started and first 15 years that I was in Stoughton, the salary scale really was set up so when you were younger and you didn't have as many years of experience, your increases were much less. And as you had more years of experience, more education, et cetera, the increases became more significant. So as a younger teacher, my increases were less significant. It's now that I've hit a more significant period of time in the district, as well as many of my colleagues, all of a sudden that scale with the elimination of longevity increases, the top end went like this. And now with the proposed equal increases for all staff members, it's going like this. So while I'm still making more than younger teachers, my increases are not significant, where that's the direction that the district had originally proposed. When I look at the possibility of the retention increases for teachers at years 3 and 10 being $2,000 and 5, 15, and subsequently $1,000, some of us can kind of interpret that as, are we saying that those teachers are more significant? Or they have contributed more to the district? And I would have a hard time justifying that. We were told that the district can no longer, or couldn't afford to keep the longevity increases going, but that's kind of where we're going with the retention increases, but giving those bigger bonuses at the early end. So I'm not saying that we should take that away. But I do think that it would be helpful and in good faith for the district to consider some sort of transition while you're tipping that overall scale for your salaries. Remember that some of us were down here to begin with. We were on the low end to begin with. Now we're getting kind of the decrease at the top as well. The increases under the current plan, if you were already making money in the blue and the orange section and you leveled over, you had nowhere to go. But if you were a younger teacher and all of a sudden, you know, you were doing awesome and you got that higher evaluation, there were people getting $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $13,000 raises. I know those were the exceptions to the rule, but that's caused a lot of hard feelings. It's difficult to know, wow, how come your raise is so much more significant? I'm working just as hard or harder. I know that there's a limited budget. I completely understand that, but I also know that with the savings and premiums, with the insurance change, it would be helpful if maybe there would be a way to either even out those retention increases or consider using some of that money to compensate for loss of income with longevity and now loss of income with the increases.
And Ms. Harris, you're right at 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
So if there's anything else you want to say, please say it, but say it quickly, please.
Nope, I think we're good. I think that it just would be helpful there, and maybe we need to consider looking at why are people leaving at 3 and 10 years. I don't know that it's necessarily the salary. There are a lot of other issues. I don't think that a $2,000 bonus or the extra 1,000 is necessarily going to be comparable to the incentive that's going to cause them to stay. I think there's more involved. So thank you very much.
Next on the list, and I'm sorry, I'm a little afraid of your last name, is Dean Baldukas. It's a combination of my cowardice and couldn't figure out the K. So, sir, you have about 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I'm here to speak about graduation. Yesterday, my son is a disabled child. His name and the name of his colleagues were not on the graduation program. I understand that it was past regime's policy. I don't know if that's the case or not. I do know in the very recent past that the names of disabled individuals were in the program. It was difficult for me when my mother-in-law pointed out his name wasn't in the program, and my immediate reaction was, of course, the disabled child, and I just threw it in the trash, and then I found out later what happened. We have been in IEP meetings where they talk about him graduating with his class or continuing the 18 to 21 program. We were steadfast with him graduating with his class. It would have been nice to know that he wouldn't be in the program. I feel it's a totally exclusionary policy. I don't know why it's a policy when everybody is being recognized for any difference or how they identify. Nowadays, for sure, a person who's obviously disabled should be recognized for that disability, but also applauded for the effort that he puts forth. He's been in school for 15 years because he was in early childhood. Graduating from high school for him is possibly the highest academic achievement he will ever have. And putting his diploma and his hat on his shelf along with the program was entirely our plan. And now, you know, it takes it away from us as a family. It takes it away from him as an individual. Every day, my son battles, as do many of his friends and colleagues in the school. And it's difficult. And some days, honestly, it's punishment. And for him not to be recognized is like sticking your finger in the eye of our family. And probably, I can't speak for them, but other families probably feel put upon as well. So if it was an outdated policy, then you should move forward and change it. It should have been changed probably when the superintendent came and reviewed all the policies that were in place, as I presume should have been done or was done. I don't like hearing that it was another regime's policy. That's, yeah, but you're putting the blame on somebody else. It's a bad optic. It looks bad. It was grading. We had family there and we had to explain, we couldn't explain why my kid wasn't in the program. We pay over $6,000 a year in property taxes. And for my kid to be excluded is sort of like, well, as long as we get your money, we're all set. So you can say that's my immediate emotional response. I don't want to hear that not including his name on the program could potentially eliminate him from 18 to 21 services because, again, in the past, other individuals were placed in the program. We talked about it with his teachers, about him graduating this class. We expected it to be there. I don't think it's too much to ask, and I don't think eliminating his name would somehow exclude him, just like including all the people in the National Honor Society and the valedictorian somehow makes them better. All's my son,
Mr. Valdukas, you're right at 3 minutes.
okay,
So,
needs is equal treatment. Thank you for letting me speak.
I mean, if there's anything else you want to say quick, please say it.
No, I'm done, thank you.
Okay, thank
Thanks
you.
for getting my name right, too.
Next on the list is Kathy Zimmerman.
Hi, my name is Kathy Zimmerman, and my son, Mitchell Scheckert, was one of those students that was excluded from the program at graduation yesterday. My son has been at that school with the class for 12 years, 3 if you count early childhood. He has been forced to do inclusion, follow the rules, meet graduation requirements. Yesterday, I thought his name may have been forgotten, but to my surprise, Mitchell and his special needs friends were deliberately excluded off that program. Why, I ask? I would like to know. I'd like an answer. After the ceremony, I spoke with Principal Mr. Cruz. I was told that he was deliberately wasn't included, and that was the way it was. His shoulders were shrugged, and I was told the conversation was over. I don't think so. This is wrong. For 12 years, I have worried about my son being bullied and discriminated against. Never did I think the people of the Stoughton School District would be the ones that are going to be bullying and discriminating against my son. Who made this decision? I can't get an answer. Nobody will tell me why. Yesterday cannot be fixed, but we have to be a voice for our future kids because this can happen again. It is so wrong. I cannot explain enough to you what it is. My son was so looking forward to graduation. A lot of these kids can't read, they can't write, but they sure can see their name. Their name wasn't on that program. It's the little things to these kids. If you don't have maybe a special needs child, you don't understand. But it is a big deal. So I'm just saying this is discrimination. And for most students, this is the biggest moment of their lives. And for Mitchell and his friends, it is. And I would like to know why this was done. There is absolutely no excuse. It wasn't a simple mistake or oversight, Mr. Onsiger. I'm sorry, it wasn't. And there's no reason for it. We were not informed before the program. You know, we had no idea until we were informed. So I think there needs to be answers, and I hope this does not happen to future families and kids, because you can recognize anybody for everything, but not our kids. And they have worked truly hard. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Beth Putney. Sure. Would you like to pass her, would you rather pass her around to us?
Sure.
She's been in this district since she was in early childhood. She also has 2 older sisters that both respectively graduated from this district in 2010, 2012, both on Honor Society and whatnot. She is nonverbal, but she's definitely not one to be underestimated. She's kind of one of those fish that swim against the current, if you will. She has always been very techy and has an ability to notice the details others often miss. Now, school has also been a huge challenge for her due to communication issues, since she's nonverbal, but she has been very determined. She's been an active FFA member of this district's site since her freshman year and has only missed 3 meetings out of the 4 years of attendance. And she's also been one of the top 2 fundraisers for absolutely every fundraiser they've done, sending all of these top-notch students to national and district events. She does it because she uses her technology, and that's her way of contributing. The reason I'm giving you the background is because I think that is important for you guys to understand the full ramifications of this. She truly deserved having that moment where she realized that her name was in print. I dropped her off at her homeroom, and shortly after getting our seat, I realized, like the rest, that her name was not on there. I prayed that they did not hand out programs because I knew her, with her attention to detail, would look for her name. And of course, they did, and she found it. That night, after talking to her, I asked her during bedtime, I said if she had had anyone talk to her in regards to why her name was not listed on there. She said no. I asked her if she understood why her name was not on there. She said no. Then I said, excuse me. Then what I did is I asked her if anyone had explained it, and she had said no. Then I asked if she felt that she understood why she simply wasn't included on that. And she looked at me and she did this, which is bad. And then she spelled out choice. And then she did this. And she felt she had made a bad choice, resulting in her omission from being listed on that sheet. My husband doesn't even know that story. We work opposite shifts all the time. The 2 older daughters live, one lives with us currently, the other one is close. The 5 of us work together and have since she's been born to help her with this. I reiterated it wasn't her bad choice. It had nothing to do with her. I think she understood. But what I'm more disturbed about on top of all of this is the fact that, yes, I also had a conversation with Mr. Cruz after the ceremony and was told that this was the way it was, and it had always been that way, but yet I do know for a fact that in 2010 and 2012, there were special needs kids that were in the 18 to 21 program that were listed on the program.
We're about
That's
at the
it.
end.
Thank
If
you
there's
so
anything
much.
else you want to say to finish up, go ahead, please.
Just, I don't understand the discrepancy, and I'm all about being transparent. Even if you mess up, as parents, we mess up, we drop the ball. Everyone's human. And I appreciate the efforts that they're trying to do within the school to fix, so to speak. But something has to be done to correct it so there's more transparency and accountability for the people that are in charge of these things. Thank you.
Next on the list is Lisa Pugh.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Pugh. I live at 1303 Stunt Lane. I get a little emotional, so I'm going to try to hold it together. I'm going to start with some good news, and hopefully that will help me. Today, my daughter Erica, the day after graduation, she started her very first paid job. She's working at BBG's, and she's rolling silverware, and we got reports back from staff there that she did an excellent job, and the manager at the restaurant said that's so nice to see one of her workers actually really want to come to work and be excited about working. So I'm just excited about having raised a good worker. She's 18 years old, and I really credit the extraordinary Stoughton High School staff and the OUT team, the transition team, with helping her to get there. Because if you met Erica, she has a pretty significant disability. She's nonverbal. She didn't want to get off that stage yesterday. But she's going to be a worker, and that's a goal that my husband and I have had for her for a really long time. But we couldn't do it ourselves. And this is a really great school district, and we've been really happy with everything that has been provided to all of my children. I also have an 8th grader who'll be a freshman. But for Erica, it's really meant inclusion, and the inclusive philosophy of the school district has been so important to us. And you are a jewel in the state when it comes to how students with disabilities are accepted and educated, and the way the curriculum is modified for students. It's really incredible. And so that's why what happened yesterday with leaving the names of those students off of that program was so incredibly disappointing and really speaks against the culture that is happening in all of the classrooms and the way that teachers are trained and hired here. And so I guess to me, it's really a cautionary tale of however that mistake happened and whoever maybe was in part of the decision to decide that it was appropriate to leave those students' names off of the program, that there needs to be some serious look at retraining or to re-educate people about the culture of inclusion, because those students really belong in that class and were accepted by their classmates as community members. And I think the message of their names being off there was something totally contrary to what you try to do in your classrooms every day. So I hope that the culture isn't eroded. I hope that staff will recommit to the values of inclusion in education and throughout the community. And I really think that the reason that Erica was able to be hired as a person with a significant disability at a business is because people here in Stoughton, from the children on up, really value people with disabilities. And so please do not lose that. Please commit to retraining. Please recommit to the principles of inclusion throughout the district. Thank you.
And Greg Jensen?
Thank you. Greg Jensen, 724 Berry Street. Most of you on this board know me. I'm a city council member. And wasn't going to say anything, but then I'm listening to what I'm hearing here, and it impressed me. One thing you may not know about me is I also have a special needs grandson who is in the school district. He's a few years away from graduation, but hopefully he will attain that privilege. Given the history of this that Dr. Onsucker had noted, I guess it's somewhat understandable that we have this oversight. However, it's not very forgivable. This is obviously hurting. It's hurting these people. And I think if it would have been Owen sitting there in graduation, it would have been hurting me as well. That said, I want to acknowledge the day-to-day challenge that these parents and their children have. I also want to acknowledge the day-to-day challenge that all of the staff, the instructors have, teaching these children and helping them to get through to graduation. That is extremely important. I would ask that the school district, the board, Dr. Onsucker, please review all of your policies so that anything like this will not happen again. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. That is the end of the list of people who've signed up for public comment. We do have a few minutes left if anyone else has anything they want to say. This is an issue that is clearly important to all of you, and I want to make sure that every voice is heard and we hear everything that y'all have to tell us. So could you start by identifying yourself, please, because you're not on the list?
Yeah, I apologize. My name is Jennifer Zimmerman. I am Mitchell Scheckert's cousin. I actually live in Belleville, so I'm not in the Stoughton School District.
You're welcome anyway.
Well, even if I weren't, I would be jumping in. I'm here on behalf of Mitchell and my family and the families of Mitchell's friends, and I came to graduation yesterday, and I just want you to know how disheartening it was to see that his name was not on there, along with these kids that he has grown up with. And I have always been so proud that I can't say all, but a majority of the classmates have accepted him. And that was so wonderful to me because as an outsider, and we can't be by his side all the time, we were so afraid someone would hurt him and he wouldn't be able to tell us. And he would be discriminated against and picked on. And like my aunt said, it was devastating to see the discrimination and the bowling heaven from adults, from the very people who are supposed to protect him and celebrate his achievements with him and with these other students, rip it away. These children don't necessarily comprehend some things that others might not, but I can guarantee you all of them understood that they were graduating, that this was a huge deal, and they know their names, and Mitchell carries around his yearbook with him 365 days a year, and will show you pages he's on and point out his name. And this was a big deal that the school district chose to omit these kids' names. I have shared any posts that I have seen on Facebook because I believe this is a shame on you experience, and a lesson needs to be taught, unfortunately, not only to you, but to any other school that may have this kind of policy in place. Because we are in a country right now that's going through a lot, and we are trying to put an end to violence, to bullying, and to discrimination. And we've got to start at the top, meaning start at the adults so that our children don't repeat this. And so I'm really hoping that you all sit and think and make sure this never, ever happens again.
Thank you. We have time for one more comment if anybody else wants to speak.
Hi, I'm back. I think you guys probably remember me. I'm Isabel Genter. I sat there about a month ago. I'm a senior at Stoughton High School, and I think something that's really special about our district is that I've been raised to see my peers not as my disabled peers, but just simply as my peers. And I've grown up with a lot of them. I remember having Mitchell in my kindergarten class, and I just think that it didn't only hurt the families of these people, but I think it was kind of sad to go through 13 years of schooling with these amazing individuals and to not be able to fully complete it together and to have them be excluded. I know you guys have the power to change it, and I just really hope you do, because I think you can all see that it really hurt not only the families, but us as students as well.
With the limited time, I also wanted to come up here. My name's Quinn Link. I have a brother who went through the disabled kid program here, and he's doing really great things for the community now. And I like to thank the opportunity that you guys have provided for him. And this doesn't take away from that, but what it does is just shows that you might provide for him, but you don't really want to show the recognition. And I think if we were in this position like this year, my brother's obviously older, we would be devastated that this moment, he wouldn't have that, because he would know, we would tell him, we would show him, we'd be, there you are, you're here with your class. And the people that he knows, he's a lovable guy, everybody loves my brother. And I really feel for these families and how much work they put in and how much work everybody puts in, and to not see that. There's moments in high school that mean a lot, and I remember my brother when he got asked to prom, that's a big moment for that to have happened. And it's just, you take away from that and you can't go back. So the best thing that you guys can do is just to fix it going forward, and I think that needs to happen today. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just miss my friends, but the only thing is I'm graduating too, but I just love my friends, but it's not, my name wasn't on there, it wasn't, and it's sad, you should put a name, I wasn't on there, I wasn't. I miss my whole friends.
Thank you.
Melissa Robinson, 124 Stoughton Avenue. I would like to ask that on an upcoming agenda, I'm assuming you're all about transparency with the community. Please add an agenda item about the policies and the procedures in the school district and what are you doing to rectify them? And then have next steps and follow through with them. It's not just this instance that's an issue, it's bullying, it's alcohol, and it's drugs. You have big issues here that need to be fixed and you need your community support. So please get that, put it on agenda, and I hope you follow through.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
would you please leave your email address with Ms. Egan if
I
you're
would love
comfortable
to.
doing that? Thank you, everyone. And we are out of time for public comment. The next item on the agenda is the district administrator's report. I would suggest that folks stick around for a minute, please.
Thanks, Frank. Couple things. First of all was graduation, and yesterday was graduation, about 252 students. And it was a mistake, pure and simple. It was a mistake for us not putting the names in the program. And we are trying to rectify it with reprinting the programs. I know we can't recreate the moment. I know that's not possible. I sincerely apologize to the families because I can't recreate the moment, and I wish I could. But the only thing that I can do is make sure that we're reprinting the programs and that going forward, this does not happen again. But it was a mistake. It should not have happened, and I apologize to the families and the communities for the frustration, the anguish, and everything else that it's caused. And that, again, we can do our best that moving forward, this does not happen again. But we are reprinting programs and sending programs out to all the families of the graduating class of 2018 to include the students that were not on the program. All I can say is I'm sorry we made a mistake.
I just have a question. I'm allowed to ask a question regarding what you're saying.
I'm sorry, our procedures don't allow that. You are welcome to email us afterwards, and we'll answer any question you have. So if you need my email or Dr. Onsager's, if you want to ask Ms. Egan, she can get it for you before you leave.
But again, I apologize because it was a mistake that should not have happened. So that was graduation. Most of the board was able to make it. A couple other things. Thursday is the last day of school for our students. Friday is a work day for our staff. June 11th starts our Lunches for Vikings program, which, if you remember, that's the program that students, our young children of our community can, for 5 days a week, get a bag lunch. And then June 18th is the first session of our summer school. So that's what I have.
Folks, you are welcome to walk out at any point on us. Everybody does. You are also welcome to stay for the entire meeting if you would like, but there's nothing else related to the issue that has brought most of you here tonight. So I do want to thank everyone for coming, and I want to thank you particularly for your comments and for helping us to learn from our mistakes and do better. And I appreciate your comments and the spirit in which you made them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the consent agenda.
move approval of the May 21st, 2018 regular board meeting minutes. Move approval of the May 17th, June 19th, 2018 check register as presented. We would like to say thank you to the following individuals and groups and move approval of their donation to the district. From Alliant Energy Foundation, Inc., $5,000 for Sand Hills Steam Smart Lab. From Stoughton Viking Wrestling Club, $3,105 for Fargo Wrestling Tournament, hotel, and travel costs and expenses related to Badger State Wrestling Tournament. From Stoughton Youth Running Club, $2,191 for cross-country invitational t-shirts. From Brooke Johnson, $300 for supplies to support students at the high school. From Kigansa Working for Kids, $73 for Kigansa 4th grade field trip to Old World, Wisconsin. From Stoughton Youth Running Club, $54 for athletic tape for high school track team. From Noah Acker, $20 for FFA banquet. A related cash donation budget adjustment for $10,743. Move approval of permanent professional educator contract for Isabel Hemley, Amy Connors, and Robert O'Brien for the 2018-19 school year. Last, I move to approve the resignation of Darlene Schnook, Chris Roshold, and James Young at the end of the 2017-2018 school year.
The consent agenda has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
By Mr. Jackson. We'll call the question. All in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The consent agenda is approved. We will now move to committee reports. Have we had any committee meetings since the last school board meeting?
Our policy committee was canceled tonight due to lack of quorum.
Okay.
But I have a meeting set up with Tim in a couple weeks, and I'd like to still touch base with you. We had a couple items on there that wasn't significant.
I would suggest that the agenda for the policy committee include a review of our special needs policies.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably go further and start looking at going through our policies and looking for other areas where we might be inadvertently or discriminating. So yes, we can certainly talk about that.
Thank you. Has facilities met, Steve?
I reported at the last board meeting.
You did,
from our
yes.
previous facilities meeting.
When is your next meeting?
I think we're looking for potentially September to do the.
Oh, that's right. It was after the facilities.
After the surveys back in?
After the facilities studies completed.
But we also talked about doing a session on futures.
Yep.
Classroom.
The future classroom, right. Thank you, Tim.
Finance has not met since our last meeting. I reported on that last time. Our next meeting will be June 18th.
Same boat for employee relations. We do have a meeting next Monday at 6 o'clock.
What's that meeting going to be about, Joe?
I have not seen the agenda.
Fair enough.
Dr. Unsider.
To be determined.
Okay, next on the agenda is the OPEB report. Oh, I'm sorry, John.
The ad hoc committee is still awaiting the assignment of 2 additional members.
Yes, let's take care of that right now. We'll appoint Ms. Patterson and Ms. Hoppy to that committee, assuming that y'all are still willing to do it.
Yes.
Yes. We have no objections, so can you note that appointment, please, Becky? Thank you.
Thank you.
John.
Yep.
Can I have a question, please? Is any, how do we go about the poverty task force to get a meeting?
There is, Kelly is sending out some information. There is a meeting with the subgroup, or kind of what's turning into the poverty task force. They're talking about compassionate schools. So we talked about that today. She will be sending out an invite for sometime in July. Thank you.
Anything else?
Can I ask to be placed on the policy committee?
Let's talk about that offline. We've already made the appointments for the year. We will find a place for you. I'm not sure that's where we'll put you, but let me chew on it because I haven't thought about it yet.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else? Now, let's move to the OPEB report. And who's going to be talking?
Eric is going to introduce.
Hello, Eric.
The OPEB, otherwise known as OPEB. So every
I wanted to sound formal.
Well, so every 2 years we're required to have an actuarial study done to look at our post-employment benefits. The O stands for other than health insurance, and we have Linda Mott from Key Benefits here to talk about the report that they compiled for us this year.
Welcome.
Thank you. I believe you have a copy not only of the full valuation, but to make life a little bit easier, we have a couple-page summary that I believe you have a copy of. So
Yes.
we'll give you the quick and dirty and answer any questions you have if we need to refer back to the full report. But just looking at the outline that you have, we have prepared this actuarial valuation for quite a number of years for the district every other year as required under the obligations. However, we have had a change in the GASB statements. We were following GASB 43 and 45. Now there are new statements, GASB 75, that we must follow. So there have been changes in how the tables are set up and a few things that were done within the evaluation and how it's also shown on your financial statements. But go ahead.
Can you remind us what GASB stands for?
Government Accounting Standards Board.
Thank you.
So it's the accounting requirements. And that is the basis by which we must follow because DPI, the Department of Public Instruction, requires that the financial statements be in accordance with the Government Accounting Standards guidelines. Okay? Sorry, I could get wrapped up in just like everybody else.
We know. We have our own target.
And
So,
sorry, following with that, about what the numbers mean. The 43, 45.
Those are statements within the GASB guidelines, the outlines, and they have replaced GASB statements 43 and 45, how we were doing it, the guidelines, with GASB statements 74 and 75.
Okay.
And that's where some of the changes have been made. Okay. And so we are up to date with that. We have been transitioning a lot of public entities over to the new guidelines. We've worked with a lot of the auditors, gotten feedback on our reports, because honestly, the report that we give you is a tool for your auditor to complete the financial statements. That is the focus, and our goal is to make it as easy as possible to do that, and to try to take something that's complex and put it in as easy terms as possible to understand it, okay? So hopefully I'll succeed in that tonight and just give you the highlights of that. So if you look at that outline, the background and certification is basically saying we're following those new statements, GASB 75. The valuation has to be signed by an actuary, certified by an actuary. In this case, it was certified by 2 actuaries noted there. There were some changes in definitions. Basically, when we do this actuarial valuation, it is as of a date. So as of 7/1 or 6/30/16, including obligations through 6/30/17. Now, what's different about this than it was under the old guidelines is that we are actually now showing on your financial statements the obligations through 6/30/17 on your financial statements for 6/30/18. So you will always be a year behind, okay? GASB allows either the same date or a year behind. A year behind is easiest for everyone, and it is acceptable under the guidelines. And why it's easier is if we had to wait to show that on your financial statements for 6/30/18 through 6/30/18, I couldn't be here tonight showing that to you. I would have to wait till July or August because we have to wait to the end of the school year so we know exactly how many payments were made and what was the actual discount rate as of that date, etc. So it would make a much tighter time frame for completing the valuation and getting it into your auditor's hands to complete then your financial reporting. So we do find the majority of school districts that do not have a trust, which you do not, doing it on a rollback or a 1 year behind basis. So just want to let you know that that is why what we're looking at it the way we are. So the definitions, they mean the same thing, it's just they changed the term. So our total OPEB liability is everything that was earned by the actives and the retirees through that valuation date of 6/30/17. So we're looking at, as an active or a retiree, how much have they earned of the benefit they're going to get when they retire, or if they are a retiree, how much have they earned that we have not yet paid them. So it's as of that date, how much is quantifiable in today's dollars of what we expect to pay out based on the benefits and their years of service so far and what they will get when they stay to retirement. Now, having said that, we don't assume that everyone is going to stay to retirement. We are using the WRS rates of turnover, rates of mortality, and rates of retirement. So it is trying to stay in line with what is expected to happen, okay? That's where all the number crunching comes in. The second bullet says service cost. Service cost is what's being earned in a calendar year, or excuse me, a fiscal year. So between 2016 and 2017, the active employees have earned 1 year of additional benefits towards what they're going to get when they retire, and that's called your service cost. And then your net OPEB liabilities, if you did have a trust, we would look at the value of the assets in the trust as of 6/30/17 and subtract that from the total OPEB liability to say what's the net, what's the amount that's still unfunded. Since there isn't a trust, those two numbers are the same. Okay. The OPEB expense is a particular table that explains the expense for a given year and how much has been accumulated or incurred for that year. And then the actuarially determined contribution. If you remember in the past, we had an annual required contribution, an ARC that we were looking at. Well, that was something GASB said, that's the wrong way to say it, because it's giving the impression that it's required that you actually start putting this money aside or accounting for that total amount. And it's determined by an amortization of the total obligation. So if you don't have a trust, you really don't have an annually determined amount, which they now call the actuarially determined contribution. So if you had a trust, we would give you an ADC or an amount so you could fund it over a 30-year period is the maximum period of time. I want to tell you that out of the school districts in the state, about 25% of them have a trust to fund this post-employment benefit in the manner that you have now. And so you are in the majority of not funding the OPEB benefit that's paid out at retirement in this manner. And so it is something to continue what you're doing is an acceptable practice. Now, when we talk about the benefits on the bottom of page 1, you have the HRA benefits for the teachers upon retirement and then a continued health benefit for administrators. You also give the teachers, administrators, and support staff the ability to self-pay by using sick leave that's converted to a dollar amount, and then, of course, the ability to self-pay through making payments on their own for COBRA. Now, as a result of that, GASB has identified what they call implicit rate subsidy, and it's their term. And what they're saying is the actuaries have to look at the value of the benefit, not the cost. So even if they pay 100% of the premium, if you look at someone who's 55 to 65 years old, on an actuarial basis, we expect them to have higher claims costs. That's where our big medical expenses come in, okay? And so as a result, even if they're paying the same premium as the district is paying for someone who's a singular family that's 25, 35, 45 years old, they're getting a greater value because they're expected to have more claims. Another way to look at it is if they went out in the marketplace and tried to buy an individual plan that was exactly like your plan, it would cost them more. So you're actually subsidizing, if you will, through the blended rate for single and family, the younger people, in having the older group on your plan. It's driving medical trend. And so that difference is called implicit rate subsidy. Now, we have cities and counties whose only benefit is the right to self-pay and stay on our plan until they're Medicare eligible. And their only obligation is that implicit rate subsidy. But if they didn't allow that, there wouldn't be the medical trend increases that you see as a result of it. And so that is also a factor that we take into the obligation. The sick leave itself is a compensated absence. So we didn't value that because it's already accounted for on your financial statements by your auditor. But the use of those sick leave dollars to stay on your health plan will create some implicit rate subsidy, and we did include that, okay? And then, of course, on the bottom of page 1, we also assume that 80% of the active teachers who are retiring by 6/30/18 and administrators who are eligible for a post-employment benefit would stay on the health insurance plan for the duration of the benefit they have, and then additional 20% will stay on after that to self-pay to Medicare. And on the top of the next page, we also assume similarly that 80% of teachers retiring after 6/30/18 who are eligible for a benefit would elect to stay on the district's health insurance plan, and then 20% of the other classifications would use those monies for COBRA and stay on as well. And so we're looking at that implicit rate subsidy. So a lot of assumptions, and that's why a study is updated every 2 years, because we're looking at those assumptions. We're updating what WRS's trends are in some of these areas and what is happening in your district, and saying, has something changed here that we need to use a different assumption, okay? I also mentioned already that the valuation date and the measurement date are June 30th, 2017. You're going to use this valuation and these tables for reporting as of 6/30/18. Now, we won't run a new study next year, but we will have to update the tables for reporting for 6/30/19. So every other year, we do a study, and the year in between, we just update the tables. And that's the guidance under the new GASB guidelines. You also have an actively funded benefit for teachers. And so any of the teachers that were that did not retire by 2022 are now getting this actively funded benefit. When I say actively funded, it's something they get in retirement, but it's something that you're putting the amount of money they've earned each year aside in an irrevocable trust in the year it's earned. So in essence, that trust is fully funded at all times for everyone who's eligible for the benefit that they've earned up to that date. And so there's no reason for us to include that in the valuation. I used to tease people before Act 10 and said, I'm trying to work myself out of a job. Since Act 10, I really am. I've helped a lot of districts move away from having the need for an actuarial valuation. And eventually your district will be in that situation. As you hire new people, they're going to be eligible for this benefit you're funding in the year it's earned. And no one else will be eligible as a teacher for the old benefits, so that group will eventually either retire or leave the district and it will go away. Now, that's not true of the other groups, but the teachers are the majority of your population, so it will have an impact on your obligations. And that we're seeing more of. We're seeing districts who are saying, hey, let's transition to something else and start funding in the year that it's earned and setting that money aside, looking at the fact that eventually we will work ourselves out of an unfunded expense. And also, by creating a benefit that has more value, maybe it's not the same dollar amount, but more value for a younger employee coming in to the district. And so it makes sense with the changes that you made. So looking at the bottom of page 2, or almost to the bottom there, your total OPEB liability on this report, everything earned through 6/30/17 by the actives and the retirees that has not been paid out, it will be in the future, is that $2,066,136. Okay? Medical trend has a lot to do with that. Obviously, the cost of health insurance increasing. The second line, fiduciary net position, means trust assets. We don't have a trust, therefore it's zero. So your net OPEB liability is the $2,066,136. Now, what we like to show is what happened here from the last time we did a study. So if you look at the changes in liability, our net OPEB liability back when we did the study in July 1 of 2015 was $3,195,000. So you can see that obligation has gone down. What's interesting about that is between 2015 and 2017, almost 2018, people have earned an additional 3 years of benefits, okay? So that would have increased that. But obviously, because of the turnover and some of the people that have left, and the fact that no new hires have been added to that group, your obligation is going down. So you're going to have kind of this jerky movement where it's going to be increased because of earning more, but decreased because as people leave, there's less people that are now earning that benefit and continuing until retirement. Does that make sense? Okay. So the other thing that we look at is the 30-year pay-as-you-go. In the reports, it's not required, but one of the things we found extremely helpful to the boards in particular is to see what your pay-as-you-go looks like. If you have your report, it's on page 17 of the report. It looks like this. And basically it shows over the next 30 years, if in a perfect world all the assumptions in our report were correct, what would our payout each year, actual cash amount? And that would be column C. What would that look like? And you can see it starts off rather high, but over the next 30 years, it is coming down, and the amounts per year are coming down. Now, couple that with the fact that you are setting monies aside for the new hires coming in, obviously that's the other side of the table. But you can see there is a light at the end of the tunnel. This is going to come down, and eventually it's going to go beyond 30 years. It will go down to zero, and we won't have an unfunded obligation anymore. So you can see on that second line, our pay-as-you-go, if I added up the 30 years from 2015, was $3.3 million. Our pay-as-you-go now has dropped down to $2.9 million. And again, you will see as more people get to that age of retirement or forfeit their benefit by leaving before retirement, it will work itself down. But it's going to take time. It's going to be a slow process. Okay?
And at what point will you have worked yourself out of a job?
Well, for you guys, I'll probably retire before that. But like I said, it depends upon the district. It depends upon the approach they take. And one of the interesting things about the post-employment benefits in Wisconsin is when we first started doing this, good grief, 15, 20 years ago, it took a long time before I saw two benefits that were the same. Every district had a different benefit for their employees, and so the starting point was different. The philosophy of why we had the benefits was different, and now the changes since Act 10 have been different, so that it's appropriate with what is that district trying to accomplish, what are they saying through their benefits, and how do they want to do it. So it all depends upon where you're at and where you're headed, but everyone seems to be headed in the same direction of controlling the costs, but still trying to provide a meaningful benefit. And of course, the ratcheting down so you're not pulling the rug out from somebody who is planning on this benefit for retirement. Okay. So any questions?
I know it's a little eye glazing, but I think I have questions. We don't have a trust. So where do we keep this money? In which account are we setting aside these funds?
We have been operating on a pay-as-you-go method, so at the point in
Oh, it's
time which
pay-as-you-go.
is,
Okay.
so again, looking at the two different benefits, those that retire and have a contribution at the point in time they retire, that's when we contribute to an HRA. And then as Linda referred to, those are sort of our grandfather people, and then everybody else that aren't retiring before 2022 have had funds set aside on an annual basis for their retirement into an HRA. And so every year we add that $750 to their HRA account, and we went through a period of time where we put catch-up, we'll call them catch-up payments into their HRA. So if I had been here for 10 years, I had $7,500 put in to represent 750 times those 10 years, and we have made all of those payments as of today.
So another, did you mention earlier that it's other benefits not including insurance?
I think I said that wrong. It's other than pension, isn't it?
Okay, the
OPEB,
OPEB
what it stands
is
for?
other post-employment benefits, and basically what GASB has done is the benefit that you have, the 403B benefit that you're doing for the people that were hired after, the teachers hired after that given date, that's considered a pension benefit, any cash or cash-related benefit. And so they categorized the compensated absences and the pension benefits, and then they said, well, the OPEB is the other post-employment benefits that don't fit into that bucket. So it's continued medical, dental, life, long-term care, those types of things. So it's the medical piece of it or the insurance portion of it. And so that's why we have the insurance portion or the OPEB that we aren't funding through a trust. We're just doing on a pay-as-you-go from Fund 10. And then this new benefit is being funded through the trust.
Do you have any other questions, Steve?
So with our insurance changes, does that also affect anything? Okay. I noticed that there were some assumptions around, gosh, it was, let me find. There were some assumptions that on insurance costs, it seemed like, that were different than what we're seeing with our new insurance program. So medical care trend, it's actually on page 16. So there was a medical care trend of 7.5%, decreasing 0.5% per year down to 6.5%, and then 0.1% down to 5%. Is that different than what we're seeing there? I'm looking at Erica because from an
Linda can speak to the actuary piece of this, because
Okay.
I'm not an actuary, but this study was completed. Our insurance changes, we're going to a high deductible plan, which is dropping our premiums for next year. Those take effect July 1 of next year. So the
okay.
starting point of our total cost for next year will be different. But as far as the medical trend piece, I'll let Linda speak to that.
Medical trend, starting at 7.5%, is appropriate with where we are in the industry. Obviously, this was done before these changes occurred. The next time we look at doing a study, which should be updated in 2 years, we'll be looking at and saying what happened to your medical trends. We have had a few districts where we've looked at it and said, hey, we're using 7.5, but you've been seeing 2 or 3 or whatever. So we might start that trend a little bit different. But of course, it's not going to stay that way forever. So those are assumptions that we will look at experience and work with the district to try to make something appropriate to what's happening. But that particular change was not taken into account because this happened beforehand.
Thank you.
Okay?
Are there any other questions?
This is a lot to take in,
It's
okay?
so abstract.
And
Yeah,
I just
sorry.
did the very brief overview, but as I tell Erica and anyone I talk to, I would be happy to walk through any piece of this report or the whole thing with any one of you if you ever have any questions or just want to go through it as many times as you want to. Just do a one-on-one. This is my job.
She does a great
It's
job
not
at
nice to
conferences.
threaten people.
This is my job, and it's great that I get it. It's more important that you understand what you need to for your purposes. And so, even though I've spoken tonight, don't hesitate. You know, Steve, you've had some good questions. If you're looking at this, I'll be happy to do that. So I leave that open at any time, okay?
You did a really good job.
Thank you.
Thank you very
It's
much.
just trying to put it in a nutshell and not spend the entire evening talking about this. But again, if there are any specific questions or you just want to go through the whole thing or whatever, be happy to do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the 48 acres, and that would be Judy.
Okay, I was here about 2 months ago, and we talked about, and in your executive summary, you have notes from November 2017 and notes from March. And at that time, we talked about the reality that the school district might not be the right entity to be the ones that are managing 48 acres.
We have, I think, 3 folks, if you count Burke, who have not been here for the
yes.
previous discussion. So could you give just a little background so
Yes.
everybody's singing off the same sheet?
Yes, thank you. About 5 years ago, 48 acres of land were donated to the Stoughton Area School District. Out on, if you go past Stoughton Trailers on Highway N, back a bit. At the time, we thought that it was going to be land that we would maybe develop, that we would use for student field trips, that we would use to practice conservation. The further we got into it, and as the land continued to return to its native environment, it has been deemed a wetland. And as a wetland, we really can't do anything to change the land and are very limited with what we could do. So where we might have started out with ropes courses and shelters and places where kids could gather to do some learning and study, that's really not an option for us. So we've done a lot of work with trying to think about what would be the right use for that land and how the Stoughton Area School District should be involved in using it. In the meantime, so across these 5 years, we recognize that there should be some maintenance of that land. Right now it grows wild and tall weeds, and it has not had a controlled burn conducted in those 5 years. It hasn't been mowed or maintained in any way. So while we have studied it and we've had a survey conducted, so we have a professional survey of the land, we aren't nurturing or being as good a steward of that land as we would like to be. So that kind of brings us to now, unless you have a question on the catch up there. Okay.
Thank you.
So we literally stumbled into a potential partner called Quail Forever. And Quail Forever is a group that can't own the land, but is very willing to manage the land with our ownership. And that they would take over that stewardship, they would manage the property in a way that it could be returned to its more native space. And would also like to reintroduce quail to that property. And so they would bring in the nesting pairs and the eggs. They would be responsible then also for making sure that the land is, that we don't have weeds growing unmanageably, and that there would be controlled burns, and that they would take care of all of that. So I would recommend, and we've pursued a memorandum of understanding with Frank Sutherland, who is an attorney that we work with. So he's drafted this memorandum of understanding. I have shared it with a representative from Quail Forever, so that they're aware of it and are very excited about it. I think it is a nice match for us and for Quail Forever, I think. But so we bring that to you tonight so that you can ask questions, that I can further find answers for you, or you can give us the direction that, give us whatever direction you want to on that property, and I guess I'll open it up to questions then, or ideas.
So I think this sounds like a good partnership, and I think it's a pretty good result for us. We just maintain the ownership of the land, though, in the meantime, that's correct?
Correct.
So in the future, if things change, we could make other claims.
Correct. In the MOU, it really does say it.
And I'm looking at that right now.
It says when we don't want to do it anymore, we end it.
Okay. And I just have a couple questions about the memorandum of understanding. I don't, and maybe I'm missing it, but who's responsible for the insurance for these burns?
The insurance for the birds?
For the burns.
Oh,
when
for
they
the
do
burns.
controlled
I'm sorry.
We can insure, they can insure.
I got quite one.
200 more. Yeah, that's good insurance.
I got quail in my head, yeah.
But no, burns are potentially.
They are responsible for the insurance.
Yeah, we have $2 million with a $10 million.
Okay, and would they be doing the burns?
Yes.
Okay, good. That answers both my questions. Thank you.
Other questions? Jolie?
Yeah, I think I saw a question like that. Why Quail Forever? I mean, how do we come across you guys?
Interestingly, a woman that works here that I work very closely with, all of those 5 years that I've been studying it, Amy Ruck, her brother, Don Perseth, is the treasurer for Quail Forever. And she was in my office, and 48 acres was laying around and on the whiteboard and some planning, and she casually said, my brother would be really interested in that land. And I thought, where have you been for the last 5 years? But, but so that's the connection.
Okay. And so when I went to the website, it talks about the quails and the pheasants and so too. And I understand that, of course, our land will not be used for hunting.
Right.
Now, do you introduce the quail there, or just maintain it? What is I don't know who to ask.
Yeah, come on up.
Yeah, our full intent is to.
Can you wait till you get to the microphone?
I get excited. Don Perseth, I'm the treasurer for the Southern Wisconsin Quail Forever chapter. Yeah, our intent.
Resident of Stoughton.
Yes, yeah, I just live outside town. We've only been a chapter for 2 years, but we're part of Pheasants Forever, which is our parent company. And our intention is habitat improvement. The reason that we want to put quail in, quail are native to Wisconsin. And we have been raising quail for 5 years. Sunday we picked up 200 more. So our intent is to get the species
reinvigorated, reestablished in Wisconsin, especially southern Wisconsin. They are native and they will actually succeed. So it's a win-win for us. I mean, we have access to the burns and membership, help trim the trees and take care of the scrub brush. It's really a perfect habitat for us. We'll never hunt on there. That's not really our intent at all. It's all about being partnerships of the land.
And my last question. So our neighbors have been worried about the burn.
Mm-hmm.
How can we, or you guys, reassure them that, you know, the burning won't?
Well, we have to get
affect them?
permits to do the burns. So we get permits through, we have permits, we were doing burns this spring through the Oregon Fire Department. We'll work with the Stoughton Fire Department. We work with Dane County. We will not do any burns unless we have the permits. We cannot do them.
And so if you have to do it, like, for how long, and I don't know if is this all right that I'm asking all this
Sure.
questions right now?
Sure, you can.
Sure, I'll stop you if you get
Oh, okay, just don't
Your
throw
3
it.
minutes are up, by the way. Just kidding.
So they're worried about the burn around.
Right.
Because of the
Right.
property is right there.
Exactly.
So my question is more directed to, so how many times will you be burning if you do, and what is gonna be going on around? Are there gonna be the firefighters there, and how do you reassure them that that's not gonna affect them?
Well, generally, what we will do is we will run brush hogs or clear the borders first. We won't burn the whole thing at once. I mean, it's not realistic. 40 acres is a lot to burn at one shot. Plus, with the wetland that's there, a lot of that will not burn. So we will just do control burns in small sections, basically. We don't have the manpower, and it's difficult to get a number of people involved to do a large burn like that. We just don't have the membership. But generally, what we would look at is probably burning 2, 3, maybe 5 acres at a time, just in small sections. I haven't actually walked the property, but just by the aerial photos and seeing what's out there, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So, you know, if anybody wants some firewood, I knew that Joe would be interested in that. So, you know, we would definitely let the school district know before we did anything. I mean, it's a co-op. We work together. So our intent is to, once we do the burns, we would plant native grasses, and pollinators are huge, and try and establish prairie land more than anything. And then we have the wetland there, so there's really not much you can do with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Allison?
Hi, thank
Hi.
you.
Yes.
I am wondering if this is, you know, what the opportunities potentially would be for students at any point, not necessarily burning, but
Right.
just I mean, have you done this before with a school district, or?
We have not.
We have not, so
No.
we're kind of uncharted territory.
Well, not necessarily, because Pheasants Forever has been around since the early 80s. I think they're going on 30 years. Quail Forever's been around since 2005, but it is just a sister organization.
Okay.
So we have access to corporate entities and information. So, you know, there is a waiver involved. I mean, we would, more than likely, the school district or the students would need to have sign off on it, because there is an 18 age limit on that, I believe, if I read there.
To do that kind of work, burning.
Right.
Brush hogging.
Right.
However, our involvement with our Quail Forever and our partnership doesn't preclude students using the land. Or, that just raises the problems that we had with the land all along. We don't have facilities there, we don't have a way for a bus to get there. However, individuals, people that are particularly interested in the environmentalism, thanks. you know, they'll be welcome to be out there and join in the work. So there's opportunities, you know, for scouts or for groups that, I mean, they're not keeping students away.
No.
We're just
Not at
faced
all.
with the same barriers that we've had before we met
Oh,
quite
yeah.
forever, that we don't have a way to take fourth graders out there.
Right, no, I completely understand, maybe I should have been more specific, I was thinking, you know, there's probably, you know, conservation efforts and that kind of
Mhm.
thing, learning about the animals and their habitat.
Right.
And just prairie in general, it seemed like it might be more suited to older students that might come in smaller
Agreed, and I
groups.
think that is something going forward, working together, we can reach, you know, an understanding as far as how
Okay.
it should be managed. And, yeah, I'm certainly not against it. I'm all about for mentoring and having kids learn, you know, about the environment. So I think it's a win-win.
Is there a question over here?
Yeah, just kind of at the tie, I was going to ask a similar question as Allison asked, but, you know, thinking also, you know, we could hatch chicks. We have a lot of equipment at the high school, and but that
we can talk.
That could be an option. I'm also, there's quite a few questions around the MOU that I think we would need to maybe beef it up a little bit. There's, like, I think we should, I think the list of activities needs to be very clear, like what you guys plan to do.
Mhm.
And it seemed odd that you would only have access from Friday through Sunday. I mean, there's just a lot of things that I have, there's a question, that I have questions on about making this a little stronger of an agreement or an understanding. So maybe putting you know, a length, a duration on this without clauses, so that, you know, if something's not going well, the district isn't, you know, doesn't have this long-term liability, but, and I would be happy to, I've done some agreements with Fish and Wildlife on prairie restoration, so I'd be happy to kind of share some of those ideas.
Please.
I did just want to mention, we had our attorney draft this, and the reasoning behind some of those timeframes listed is that if we are going to, you have to be careful that you aren't creating a formalized lease, because if you do so, then there's different requirements for a school district to enter into a lease agreement, which would include like a meeting of the electors. So part of the language behind that was to not have it be the language, we didn't want the language to sort of encroach onto that like lease type language, which is part of the reasoning behind some of those time restrictions.
Okay, but it's still, I mean, it just seems really weird that,
We were struck by it also. However, the people involved have full-time day jobs. So there was something that I think Frank added about there may be other days in the spring, for instance, if you're limited to a range of days where a burn would be safe, that it might happen not on a weekend. But for the most part, the people that are our partners, because they don't, I mean, they have full-time day jobs, Monday through Friday, so that allowed that to be in here, not look like a lease because it isn't, and still achieve our goals.
and what are we being asked to do here? Agree?
We're reviewing
To
today.
move forward?
Yeah, it's a two-step, so we're discussing today, and we'll vote, when it comes back, we'll vote on it.
Is that right? I thought when I read the steps, it was we could vote if we felt it was
I thought we
appropriate,
were
but we
being-
didn't necessarily have to.
It's on discussion to be a two-step. So it's on discussion to just be
happy to vote on
discussion
it.
tonight, and then a formal vote the next meeting.
I would just like to know how it was determined that the area was a wetland? Did you have a professional
Yeah, the
wetland
DOE, yes, we had the DNR come in. I can get you the links to all the people. We've worked with UW Stevens Point, trying to make it a forest, a school forest, which they did give us that for this tiny little group of trees. The DNR designated it, I'm thinking Wendy Pelch was the wetland specialist, and Stephen Holliday was our DNR contact, and he came and did walk the land with us and Wendy walked the land as well. So we've had many people actually out there in several different seasons taking a look at it. And
How many of the 48 acres are wetland?
most.
I think it's 30, I think it's around 30.
There's a kind of a highland right by where we can park our cars. There's a small space to park our cars without infringing on the neighbor's property. And then there's this sort of highland there. And then in another corner of the property, there's a little more tree growth, not great trees, but tree growth. And for the most part, it's also bordered by a creek and has several scrapes, which at least 3 that are in there right now.
John?
Considering that there have been concerns, or at least questions, areas where we need clarification about the language included in the agreement, this doesn't seem like a super time-sensitive issue. Would we be able to postpone bringing this back for a vote for at least one meeting cycle so that we have time to take a look at that language and review?
Yeah, I think what's driving the timing on this more than anything else is that Judy thinks she's retiring. And would like to get this done before she goes. But yeah, I agree with Steve that I think the MOU could be a little tighter, and I, of course, am happy to criticize other attorneys, because that's what we do. My concern on reading it was that it doesn't seem to obligate Quail Forever to do anything in particular. So that I know that one of the concerns in the past has been the growth of obnoxious weeds. And so to the extent that our attorneys think it's a good idea, I would like to see some specific obligation, and I'm as city as you can get, so I have no idea what that looks like. But in terms of how often it's going to be mowed or burned or whatever has to happen to it to prevent the growth of obnoxious weeds.
Right. I understand.
Yeah. I have another question which will reveal exactly how city I am. Are quail obnoxious at all?
No, they have 20 vocalizations. And it's funny because the chicks that the 200 that we had gotten on Sunday, we were driving back with them from Sauk City, and these are a week old, and they're just little. They're like this big. And we're driving down the road, and all of a sudden they start talking to each other. It's like this beep, 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 beep. And it got really, really loud in the back. And I was like, man, listen to them back there. And then the driver had to call his son, so he got on his speaker, and he's like, call, and all of a sudden there's just silence. And the bird just sat there for the longest time, and we weren't really talking at all.
So you're telling us quail have manners?
Yes, it's surprising. It's very surprising.
Are they destructive at all? No. I only see them at the store wrapped up.
Yes. No, we would really like to see them. They always call it whistling. In the evenings especially, we build call houses, which most individuals will use for training dogs. But it's a small Johnny house or call house, and it's a self-contained unit that has water feeder, etc. You put about 25 birds in there, and it has a chute on the front, and you let birds go, and then you train your dogs. But they will always call the birds that are loose back to the pen. So there's a little chute at the bottom. So you let birds go, train your dogs, and then you go in there in the evening and they will have called all the birds back in. They're extremely vocal and very colonized. It's actually really neat.
Better behave by my kids.
So I have like a million questions. So one of which is, can you leave your card so that you can I can get a hold of you. And you
I can leave
answer the
cards for
other
everybody if you'd like.
many questions that I have.
Yes, if you'd like to
More
sign up
than
for
we need to do.
a membership,
I may want
I'd be more than happy to get you signed up too.
Yeah, I may do that. The other question I have.
Please don't do it till after we vote.
Yeah, okay, that's a great idea.
Our banquet's gonna be at the
I can
VFW.
So this 48 acres, where it's situated, is there any place for these birds to disperse? I mean, have you thought about
They
what's around
won't,
it?
they may not stay put. I mean, they may just go wherever they want, because they're gonna look for the habitat, the best habitat. And quail like their feet in the dirt. Unlike a pheasant, pheasants can burrow into cattails and thick cover. Quail cannot do that. They just can't. So the unfortunate thing with a lot of habitat is, with the farming practices in this day and age, weeds are pretty much non-existent in a cornfield or a bean field. That's the type of cover that quail need. So when you look at a cattail marsh, that's a pheasant habitat, that's not quail. So part of creating the habitat for them is to have open areas. So they like the savannas, they like to be under the trees, they like to be able to move around, because they're not that big. I mean, they're literally 6 inches tall.
So they may just fly off?
They may, but I mean,
that
that
may be benefiting a lot of.
That's usually what happens, because we have, the property that we are, we're getting, we're working on 103 acres on the east side of Hook Lake. That's where the farm is. And we released birds for a couple of years on the farm. And a neighbor on the west side over by Kopke's greenhouse, this spring, when the weather was bad, they had quail under their feeders. So they had migrated all the way from almost the east side of Hook Lake to the west side. So they will move around, but still, you know, that we have some that are now laying eggs, so it's exciting. For us, it's exciting.
Yeah, well, leave your card, because
Yes,
I
will definitely do that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other questions? Jolie?
So wouldn't that cause problems to the neighbors?
I don't believe so. I mean, they're so intriguing and interesting birds. It's just, a lot of people have.
I love quails.
Yeah, I mean, people have never, some people remember, you know, they seen them when they were kids, and it's been years, and, you know, they're like really excited about the possibility of the quail being around again. It's probably unrealistic to think that they're ever going to take over like they used to, but we're going to try. I mean, for us, it's about the habitat and giving it a chance.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Steve?
So you mentioned dog training?
Yes.
Is
Not there.
No?
No,
Okay.
I'm just saying that's how people train their dogs.
Okay. So that 48 acres was designated a school forest, right, Judy?
Yes.
So would the activities change that designation, or would it remain a school forest?
At the time that we sought that designation, there was some fiscal support available. And immediately after we got the designation, that support is no longer, the kind of funding or grant is no longer available through the state. So we're not getting anything by being named a school forest. We don't, I mean, it's not a place to develop a forest. So there's just this little corner of kind of scrub trees. I think they were being generous at our request to be a forest. But we get nothing out of being a school forest, and we contribute nothing.
You mean financially? We get
Financially, correct.
Okay. All right, just something to think about. All right.
Other questions or comments? Thank you very much, Judy. I know this has been on your mind for a long time, and I think this is a really neat solution, so.
I do too.
Thank you very much for coming this evening.
It's much more informative.
Yeah, just drop a stack of those off. Next on the agenda, we have Judy Singletary talking about academic standards.
Okay. Annually, it is our pleasure to bring to you the standards that inform the curriculum and resources for the Stoughton Area School District. And so I have prepared a one-page reference guide, I guess, with links to the standards. Most of our standards are drawn from the national standards. Most of our targets are written to the national standards, I should say. They are much more contemporary and I would say relevant and rigorous than the 1998 version of the Wisconsin State Standards, where the Wisconsin State Academic Standards have been revised. They reflect those national standards of the professionals in the field that have contributed to those standards. So our curriculum is based on these standards. We write essential learning targets to these standards. We draft our assessments to those targets, and any resources, books, digital resources are aligned then to our essential learning targets. We have two that are new this year, haven't made the list in the past. One is for coding, and that is going to support our TEALS experience. Have we talked about TEALS here yet? No.
We get a lot of acronyms.
Yeah.
Some that we did, but we just need a little refresher.
A little refresher. Okay, this is an organization that is sponsored by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where they're trying to pursue students who can code. And they want to develop teachers who can develop students who can code. And so it's a very interesting partnership where this organization seeks out engineers, coding engineers, who literally start their day first hour at Stoughton High School and co-teach with one of our teachers. And there's another partner that comes to that class as well. So we have two experts in coding and a classroom teacher who has a science or a math license, but not a lot of experience in coding. And so every single day those people come to our school and our students get to experience that curriculum. And we were chosen to be part of that partnership. So we're pretty excited about that, and our partners are right now seeking the co-teachers for us. The co-teachers who aren't licensed teachers go through some pretty rigorous training this summer about how to work with students, how to respond to students, how to deliver instruction that's engaging and at a beginner's level. So they are required to do that. And then there's a lot of follow-up with those people who are in our classrooms doing this instruction through the course of next year. So our standards for coding come from the International Society for Technology Education, ISTE. So those are new on the list for this year. The other one that's new on this list is a financial literacy standards that comes to us as a mandate from the state, that we include financial literacy in our curriculum throughout K-12. So those standards are there. We've done kind of a crosswalk. A group of teachers got together and have done a crosswalk of these particular standards. They're the Jump Start standards. And looked at where those standards are represented in our math curriculum, our social studies, our economics. At elementary, we noticed that those standards were often part of the morning meeting, if you're familiar with elementary, with library lessons in being safe, with FIED in drawing a connection between being safe online and safe on rollerblades. And then there's also some guidance curriculum that we saw a good solid crosswalk with this as well. And then I would say middle school and high school, it's much more economics, family and consumer science, and some tech ed, math, where we see those connections. So those are also new this year.
Are there any questions? John?
Yeah, can you expand on any of the specifics for how those morning co-teachers or how those classes are constructed?
Yeah. I haven't been in the class. The way I understand that it works is the business for whom our guest teachers work release their employee for that hour and a half, essentially every day. And they come to work at Stoughton High School for the first hour, and then do some co-planning with their educational assistant technically. So there's a lead instructor and then their educational assistant who has probably the same training experience in coding, but probably less experience in working with youth. So they were never a Boy Scout leader, they were never a coach, they were never any of those things. And so they would probably not be the lead teacher, they would be the educational assistant in that case. But those three people then, first hour every day, conduct this class. And so it's the classroom teacher, our employee, who's the one that knows the rules of the school, has to take attendance. We have protocols that we have to follow in instruction. So the three of them work together first period every day for a year. And the intent is that both our students are learning this coding experience, but our educator is also learning how to deliver that instruction and do that learning as well. So where there might be even 2 sections of the course being offered, the first period, they do it with someone else, or someone else does it and models it for our educator. And then by third period, when they teach it again, they're on their own.
Okay, so this is then not the only class of the day or of the year that is influenced by that program?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the first semester there's 2 sections. I'd have to double check that, but I think, and then the second semester class, there's just 1 section of it.
And so then with the adoption of these coding standards, is that going to affect the rest of any existing computer programming curriculum that we already have in our schools?
This is our computer coding curriculum. It's sort of a way for us to get our foot in the door. We tried offering something in coding a year ago and didn't have enough interest from the students. So part of this is also beating the drum and encouraging people, and it's going to be cool, and everybody's going to want to do it. It is an elective, so it doesn't count as your math credit or a science credit or any other required credit, but it serves as an elective. And they're pretty active in this, TEALS organization is pretty active in being as cool as, working at Apple.
Okay.
So they're hoping to engage students and educators in it.
Cool.
Or your basement.
All right, thank you.
Tim?
This, I think, probably piggybacks off John's question, maybe a little broader. How is this, because we're continuing adding more standards in the state, how is it impacting our overall instructional design model, especially at the middle school and high school? I mean, are we moving gradually, I know Tim had mentioned this before, continually trying to move away from more of an industrial model of schooling to maybe a more interdisciplinary or 21st century learning model? I mean, how much of that has been discussed as we implement these standards to make them live?
Most of those discussions, most of those discussions have happened at 5th grade, some 6th, some 7th, where there's a little bit more latitude, I think. It's not credit driven. It's not that this couldn't be interdisciplinary, it's that it isn't right now. I don't think that these standards preclude us from being interdisciplinary, so if that's something that we pursued the study of and did professional development and how that would look, how we would deliver that instruction, these standards are perfect for it, so they don't have to be standalone. As I was saying, even about the financial literacy standards, we did this kind of crosswalk where we really see it intersecting with, often the elementary teachers said, we do this every day. So, I mean, financial literacy includes a lot of saving something for later, or earning a recess break, or sharing how you used your time resource or saved time by doing something more efficiently. So part of it is helping the educators recognize that this is the beginning steps of financial literacy. It may not count as cash or credit cards, but to just lift up the idea that saving, spending, credit, loan, that all comes from the library, being safe with your logins and passwords, that comes from being in the lunch line, and then eventually with your computer. So I guess I kind of got off track there, but that's kind of how we would do some crosswalks if we wanted to be more interdisciplinary.
Steve? Judy, more of a curiosity, I think, given you're retiring and you have this in front of us for discussion, and we have your replacement coming soon, did you have any discussion with Catherine about this?
Kate, I have not. We met for about an hour. I'm not sure if our paths will cross again.
Okay, I know she's not on the
right.
payroll yet.
In all fairness, yeah, we're not paying her yet.
Yeah.
So I have prepared a rather long table of contents of sorts with all the words, many are acronyms, all of the things that cross my desk and cross people that we work with, so that she has at least links to finding out what TEALS is about, links to finding out what 48 acres is about, and a brief what's happened in the past. But that's probably where she'll start.
Right, and one of the,
kind of in this area here.
and one of the things, Steve, in this area, state statute says the board has to approve this. So the actual action item for this will be the first board meeting in July, because state statute says the board has to approve it at its first meeting in July. So we wanted to give you an opportunity in June for Judy to present this, for you to ask any questions. If there's any follow-up, we can do it the next meeting in June, because we didn't think Kate walking in and her very first board meeting having to explain this would be fair.
Right.
That seems kind of.
Yeah.
So if this is, why do we need to approve this when it's required by the state? I mean, why is it or am I misunderstanding? Because this is, I'm talking about the new ones, the coding and the financial. I mean, if it's required by the state, why do we have to?
It's required, and Judy, correct me if I'm wrong, it's required by the state that the district, the board approve the standards, because we need to notify our parents of what standards we're using. So the standards we're using for the coding class, we have to notify parents before the start of school. And so the state put on the statute that it has to be approved the first board meeting in July, so that we are set to notify parents before the start of the actual school year.
If I could piggyback that, that's our timing piece. The state expects us to follow a set of standards. My job is to let you know which standards that we're following, so that you're aware. Now, these are nationally well-respected standards, but we used to have to decide between national standards and the Wisconsin Model Academic Standards. Those haven't been updated since 1998, and also don't address every grade level. They addressed only grade level bands, 4th grade, 8th grade, 12th grade. And so they were hard for us to say, well, we should sort of know this in 6th grade, but we could probably know it in 7th grade. And so these national standards are really better guidance for us. But to answer your question, it is we want you to know exactly which standards it is on which we base our essential learning targets assessments and curriculum resources.
Burke.
Just a quick question. Which devices would the coding be done on?
Chromebooks.
On the Chromebooks?
Yep.
Okay.
Good question. Yeah, that was really important to us, that it could be done in Chromebooks. Yeah.
Other questions? Thank you, Judy.
So if you have any other questions, please email Judy. And if, based on questions and feedback, I'll talk with President Sullivan of whether we have another discussion on this the next meeting before Judy leaves, but plan on the first board meeting in July. It will be an action discussion item to approve the standards.
Yeah. I'll say this, if you want further discussion next meeting, email me. If I hear from 3 of you that you want it, we'll put it on the agenda. Fair enough? Thank you, Judy. Next up is staffing recommendations.
So there's two of these, and for the first one, I'll take the first one, and then I'll ask Kelly to join me for the second one. The first one is a recommendation that we add one more section of kindergarten at Fox. Currently, our class size policies is actually a target, a recommendation of 22 students in K1. We are currently sitting at 23 students per classroom in at kindergarten at Fox, and it's board policy and the belief that if we can keep class sizes, the smaller class sizes there are, especially in kindergarten, first grade, and the younger grades, the better, the more effective it is. So we are above the target of 22. So I'm recommending that we add another section of kindergarten at Fox. So I'll take that one first.
Do you know what the numbers are at the other two elementaries?
The other two elementaries are sitting at, I believe, 18, 19, somewhere in there.
And if we add this section, do you know?
They'll be about the same, yes. They'll be 17 to 18. So it'll be comparable across the three schools.
Yeah, I mean, I support low class sizes, and so I support this. My question is, do we see a lot of new move-ins at the kindergarten level throughout the years? It's usually pretty static throughout the year. Does it?
We get a few. Last year we got more in the Sandhill area than we did anywhere else, but I think that was somewhat because of some new development on Page Street, et cetera. But we always get some. We'll also have some move-outs.
Yeah.
So one of the things we could do is we could wait till August and see what our numbers are. But the longer you wait to hire, the less the pool is for hiring and getting there. So this is usually we're lower than this coming into this time of year. Normally we haven't exceeded the target range prior to leaving school in June. This year we're sitting at 23. We could get additional move-ins with some of the development that's happening in, and I always forget the name of it, where the splash pad now is going in. You could get a few more students there. You could get a few more students in that area coming in. We may not, but if everything holds tight, and these are students that are actually enrolled and in our system. So unless they move or go somewhere else, we're counting on them being here.
Other questions? Joe?
Would this FTE be expected then to move with this class as they progress, or do you think we're going to be this many kindergarten sections heading forward?
We'll look at that. We'll make that determination of where they are. Again, where do our numbers actually shake out with this class? If it remains above 23 or more, then we'd be recommending that there be 4 sections of first grade next year. And so we'll look at that. We'll make that determination probably the second Friday in January count to make sure we're at, but we'll keep an eye on it. We would hire this position, we would post it as a permanent position because we'll get a better quality of candidate that way. And we always have enough turnover in our elementary that even if we did not have 4 sections of first grade next year at Fox, the turnover I'm anticipating, we always have a little bit of turnover, we can absorb that FTE going somewhere else.
But this is a permanent position?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any facility issues there with capacity for another classroom?
It's tight. Krista will tell you they use every available space. She's got a plan laid out if she has 3 sections of kindergarten or if she has 4 sections of kindergarten. It's rearranging some, it's moving some resources and using other space for some of our specialists and things like that. We're getting to be about capacity as far as rooms at Fox, which is one of the things that the facility study will look at is capacity. we have the space right now to absorb this section. If Fox starts to grow, if that's where our development is and Fox starts to grow, then we're gonna be a little bit harder to find space. And those would be great questions conversations to have, to be honest with you, that we're getting a building at capacity and we gotta figure out what we're gonna do.
I remember Fox when Caleb and Nathan were going there and we're stacking kids on top of
Right,
each other.
right.
Yeah. Other questions about the Fox Prairie staffing?
Just, and I think you kind of already covered this, one of the other options was to hire an EA.
Right.
To keep the bigger class sizes, but it seems that a smaller.
Right.
Class size for that younger
When
population.
possible, especially at that lower level, I would prefer to hire a certified teacher who has the expertise and the training to work with the students. We could hire an EA to help support, but then you're still gonna have those large class sizes, and it would be one EA just bouncing between 3 rooms. So it would be less effective, but it is an option that I threw out there.
Less consistency.
Right, yeah.
Anything else on Fox, anybody?
I
Jill.
saw the list of class sizes for the other elementary schools, and it seemed like they were more comparable when you added the 4th teacher.
Right.
So my concern would be if we didn't add the 4th teacher, we would have parents that would be angry that their classes at Fox were significantly bigger.
Mhm.
All right, shall we move to River Bluff?
Sure, and I'll have Kelly join me on this one because she can answer questions on this one better than I can. But the proposal is at River Bluff is we currently have 2 vacant four vacant educational assistant positions at River Bluff due to retirements, due to people moving, etc. Based on the needs of our students, based on the incoming 6th grade class and their educational needs, the proposal is out of those 4, we hired 2 EAs, and the other 2 positions we don't hire, but instead of those 2 EAs, we hire a learning strategist or a special education teacher. And I'll let Kelly kind of talk a little more to that.
Based on recommendations from staff and looking at the numbers and some significant needs also in 7th grade, so we could lower the caseloads of the learning strategist, and then they would have more time for that building of capacity, co-planning, maybe some co-teaching if they had smaller caseloads. So we'd have more of the expertise of a licensed teacher providing services to the students that really need it, and then supporting teachers along the way.
Sounds great. Yeah. Full support,
Questions,
yeah.
comments? I see head nods.
And this is a cost neutral option.
So just to clarify, so the proposal is to hire out of the 4, 2 educational assistants and 1 learning strategist
Correct.
to cover these 2.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. How many of us have kids at River Bluff?
Next year.
I have a brother.
All right, I'll let
I like
them go.
that.
That's a great comment.
Like,
Thank you, Burke. Yeah, so we appreciate the presentation. I think,
Okay.
you know, those middle school is difficult. And
It's a hard age. Yeah. Those teachers are
there's
saints,
not-
I think.
There's not enough money in the world to pay me to be a middle school teacher.
Yeah. All those hormones.
It's bad enough, it's bad enough just having one in the house.
Yeah. I remember those days.
Yeah, so thank you very much.
so this agenda item will appear on discussion action at the next board meeting, looking for approval to do this.
So speaking of discussion action, we have now moved through the discussion portion of the agenda. It's 5 to 9. Let me ask this quickly. Do we want to take a 5-minute break to get a drink of water and go to the bathroom before we get to it?
Yes.
Let's take a 5-minute break, come back here at 9 o'clock.
through his crew. I don't go all the way through, I just get up and eat. Can't do
So are you
it.
getting quails?
Well, that is something I would like to talk to them about. I have 8 acres, and, you know, if they wanna try it, or do something, whatever, but it's just, I mean, I can talk to that guy for 4 hours, because I'm just interested in that stuff, and it's gonna bore a full board to do
No,
that.
I know.
I'm biased, but I think it's a win.
I think so too. No, I was, my husband, because that's what he loved.
Well, you guys aren't that far from this.
Yeah, that's what I think, maybe he wants to, that's what he did at the.
You don't need quails, Steve, you already got a lot of stuff.
I think we're gonna be fine either way, no matter. But I just prefer, we all typed up like ours. I'd be surprised.
Oh, thank you for that presentation.
Yeah. Each of us asked one, and I think we'll
start doing that.
but it was good. Yeah. Yeah, last year, we had our principals and resigned and,
Order.
I got to. That was really helpful. That was pretty exciting.
All right, we now have everybody back, so we'll call the meeting back to order. Next on the agenda is the Compensation Committee recommendation. And let's start that off with a motion, please.
I'll do that.
Okay, would you do that, Mr.
Sure. I
Jackson?
move to approve the new educator compensation plan as presented. Information will be shared with educators about the plan during the 2018-2019 school year, with the 2019-2020 school year being the first year that salaries will be determined using the new plan.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Second by Ms. Hoppy. Discussion. Mr. Fry.
I'm fully aware that we're not making changes to this plan, and I'm not proposing that we do so, but can we direct whatever committee sort of stays intact? And I think they're looking at keeping some of that committee intact, is that correct? Whether or not it is, I'm concerned about the concern that was raised tonight. It's not the first time that I've heard it about, does this do enough to reward veteran teachers? So I would like to acknowledge that and also direct that if we do continue to study this compensation question, if we could take a very careful look at somehow implementing a plan that does so.
Do you have anything specific in mind, Joe, when you say that?
I do not, and I think it's probably people that are in the profession and understand this pay structure better than I do that have those ideas, so I'm not sure how we collect them, but it does seem to be a valid concern for some people. And like I said, we're voting on this. I understand that. I'm not trying to blow it up and change it tonight. But I would like to.
You'd like to put a pin in that?
I would like to put a pin in it because I don't think this is the last time we're looking at compensation.
And I don't disagree with you that we should study some things, especially there's the leadership, I can't remember what it was exactly called, positions that the committee is recommending that we have another committee look at those. I would also, though, be cognizant and making sure that we don't look to change this plan before we give it a chance to be implemented and followed through. Because if we start saying we're going to change it all right away, then people are going to sit back and say, when are you going to change it? And people really won't buy into it. And so I'm not saying that we don't continually to evaluate it and look at it, but I think we give it a chance to see where it's at and if there's some deficiencies. And if that's what we're seeing, by all means, we can have those discussions.
I think that's a really fair point. I had another point to add to it, but it's gone because we've been sitting here for too long.
You just stood up.
And if it comes back, I'll raise my hand.
Well, I think the point that Dr. Onsager makes is a really important one. We've spent a long time in this district having this conversation about what fair compensation looks like. And as I look at the recommendation of the compensation committee, it doesn't seem that anyone's super excited about it. It also doesn't seem that anyone is super angry about it. And at the moment, that I think is the best we're going to do. And it is important for the district, and I hear what you're saying, that we have a plan that is a stable plan, that our staff can look at and say, okay, this is where I'm going to be, this is what I'm buying into, this is what it's going to look like.
And you've reminded me of my other point.
What is your other point?
Well, I think somewhere in this discussion, there was a length of time that we were just rock bottom going to commit to giving this plan. And I think we should communicate that to people. Was it 2 years, 3 years? I don't remember what. Because I think the buy-in is important, and I think we've got to roll this thing out and let it actually take hold.
In preliminary drafts, we did discuss having 5 years, but that was just discussion, and we didn't put a specific time on the proposal that's before you. So just asking for a commitment to the plan.
Thank you. Yeah, I think realistically, it's going to be a minimum of 3 years before.
I understand we can look at it at any time, but I think we should commit as a board to giving it some. If that sounds appropriate.
Yeah. John?
In in drafting this plan, it was always unclear to me what sort of concrete, quantifiable assessment we had generated on the effectiveness of the old compensation plan. I know that there was enough discontent in the district that it was clear that the school board and the district should, or had an imperative to, and a purpose to assemble a committee to come up with a new compensation model. But maybe something that the school board can do to keep from biasing or condemning a new plan that we may institute before it starts is to just, or is to come back sometime soon after deciding on a plan and determine some sort of rubric or criteria for assessing the school district's compensation plan's effectiveness at attracting and retaining staff. I don't have ideas for what that looks like, but if in a holistic sense we can just assess how our compensation plan is doing on all aspects of attracting and retaining staff, I
We
don't know.
want to know if it's working.
Yeah, we want to know it's working, but I also don't want to, I don't want to stare down a whole new plan, and laser focus on specific aspects of it, without giving it time to breathe and, for fear of ignoring the impacts it has in other ways.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Joe?
It's just a comment that I want to thank again the compensation committee for sticking with this for a very long time and answering the questions from several iterations of the board at this point. So you could pass along our thanks to the committee, that would be great.
And I'll join in that as well. There's been a tremendous amount of work in this, and I think the fact that we are here tonight voting on a compensation plan that seems to have broad agreement across the district is a tremendous accomplishment, and I want to thank you all for doing that. Any other questions or comments? At this point, I'll call the question then. All in favor of approving the new educator compensation plan as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The compensation plan is approved. Congratulations.
I'm waiting for the dance.
We now move to the employee handbook. Can I get a motion related to the employee handbook, please?
I'll move. I move to approve the revisions as presented to the 2017 Personal Policy Handbook effective July 1st, 2018.
Motion is by Mr. Buban. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Sorg. Discussion. I see no discussion. Shall we call the question?
Sure.
All in favor of approving the revisions as presented to the 2000 Personnel Policy Handbook effective July 1, 2018, so signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is approved. Moving next to the issue of cameras. Can I get a motion, please?
I'll do that. I move to approve Electric One to add internal cameras in all school buildings at an amount not to exceed $303,350 during the 2018-2019 school year, contingent upon receiving $100,000 in safety grant funds from the state of Wisconsin.
Is there a motion by Ms. Patterson? Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fry. Discussion. Ms. Sword.
The $100,000 in safety grant funds, is that what we applied to get? And do we know if we have it yet? Is that what's contingent? We don't know if we have it?
The grant application is due on Thursday, and what's indicated in that grant, there's two different levels of funding. One is a primary level, which there are certain things we have to have completed before we'll be considered for the secondary level. The primary level funding, the one thing that we need to do is put some safety film on the glass in our vestibules. So we're applying for the primary level funding for that project, and then once we do that, we will be able to be eligible for that secondary funding. And in the grant application, they identified that the max you'd receive is basically $20,000 per school building. So with our 5 buildings, we anticipate that we'll be eligible for $100,000.
What is the safety film?
I think it's to help if there were bullets. It doesn't make it bulletproof glass, but
Makes it harder to shoot through it.
It makes it harder to shoot through.
Okay.
And where is that installed?
It'll
Where would
be
that be installed?
in the glass within our vestibules. So
Oh.
when you come in, you come in the first door and then they're locked if there's glass in those areas.
Okay.
How did Waukesha get like $800,000?
That was Kenosha.
Was it Kenosha?
I think.
Nobody's-
They got $880,000.
No.
Well, the application's not even due until Thursday. And so then they'll.
They already submitted.
There was one award in the news.
So they've already approved some of them? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, yeah, they have a lot of schools.
It could be based on what they needed to do for that primary piece.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
But Eric, are you fairly confident about this $100,000? You don't see a reason to think we're not gonna get it?
I don't have any reason to believe that we won't receive it unless there's some reason that it's, there's less available that would amount to less than 20,000 per building, but I don't, indicators what I'm hearing is that you can probably expect 20,000 per building.
Okay, and if we were to some reason not get that, does that change this motion that's just been made, or will we just spend the 303?
So if we don't get that, we'll have to revisit, our
We will,
planning
okay.
for the cost and the implementation. But we felt like we could accommodate, if we receive those grant funds, we could accommodate the project, hopefully in full for next year. And again, if something happens where we don't get that amount, we will certainly bring it back to the board table to have some further conversation.
Ms. Hoppy?
We wanted to get this done over the summer, correct?
Ideally, yes.
Yeah, so do you know how long it'll take to hear back from the?
For the grant?
Yeah.
It's due on Thursday, and I believe it's targeted, I think, within 30 days to determine,
Okay.
how that's, who's going to be awarded and what.
The department is committing significant resources to moving these grants through quickly.
Yep.
Mr. Jackson?
So in the action checklist, it mentions that we have the budget to install the cameras without the grant funding. So could we change the motion?
If we change the motion, one of the things in the grant says that we can't use the grant to supplant money we are already budgeting for it. So if our motion would be to approve $300,000, then we are not eligible to apply for that grant because we would use the grant to supplant what was approved, the total dollar amount by the board.
Yeah, and so once our budget is finalized, we would propose budgeting the $200,000 for the district portion and then the amount we receive from the state.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions or comments?
I'm so sad that we're at a point in our society that we have to do this. And I am not in favor of being at a point where we have to put cameras in our schools because of guns and potential active shooter. I will support this because the safety of the kids is really important, but I am so sad that we're in this position.
How would you?
So I would agree, though I would also add, I think, This is going to aid our administrators with the, I think it's more than just to protect us from guns, it's going to aid our administrators in the investigative process. And I think that'll be a huge benefit. And so I do hear what you're saying. But I think there's also a larger scope to why we're doing this. And I know having to investigate different things in schools when you don't have that visual proof, you spend a lot of time and you sometimes can't get the answers you really need. So I support this.
Other comments or questions? Let's go ahead and call the question then. All in favor of the motion to approve Electric One to add internal cameras in all school buildings in an amount not to exceed $303,350 during the 2018-2019 school year, contingent upon receiving $100,000 in safety grant funds from the state of Wisconsin. All in favor so signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The chair abstains. Next on the agenda is the policy number 725, Start Technical College Now, which is up for second reading. Can we get a motion on that, please?
I move to approve policy 725, Start Technical College Now.
Motion by Mr. Bubon. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Fitzgibbon. Discussion?
The only thing that, there's the Start Technical College Now, and then there's the, I can't remember where I saw that.
The college,
Dual.
Yeah, do we need to have two different policies, or I don't know the significance of needing two, or could we combine it to one?
No, one is technical school and one is the university system.
Okay.
And they have different timelines.
Okay.
And really different expectations of the students, so.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Good question.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, let's call the question. All in favor of approving policy number 725, Start Technical College Now, please so signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The policy is approved. Next up on the agenda is policy 822, part-time open enrollment. Can I get a motion, please?
I'll move to approve the policy 822, part-time enrollment.
Motion by Mr. Jackson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bubon. Discussion?
I just have a question. So this works for our students going somewhere else, but not all the students coming? Oh. Both? Okay.
Any other questions? Let's call the question then. All in favor of opposing, let's try that again. All in favor of approving policy 822, part-time open enrollment, so signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Policy 822 is approved. Next up is policy 604, non-retaliation. Can I get a motion?
I move to approve policy 604, non-retaliation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Hoppy. Discussion? Let's call the question then. All in favor of approving policy 604, non-retaliation, so signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Last on the discussion action item agenda is policy 705, extracurricular groups and activities. Can I get a motion, please?
I move we approve policy 705 related to extracurricular groups and activities as written.
Motion by Ms. Sorg. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Fitzgibbon. Any discussion?
I did have, I guess I didn't notice this before, but the authority of the Board of Education on page 2 to exercise ultimate authority over the activities of all school student groups, whether or not a loss of school time is involved. How are we made aware of that?
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question. Is the question what the school groups are doing?
It says that it says the Board of Education has ultimate authority over the activities of all school student groups, whether or not a loss of school time is involved.
So
I'm not sure exactly what this means.
One of the things that means is, and I'll throw out a scenario that I'm not anticipating this would happen, but there are some districts who, in order to save for budgetary reasons, cut extracurricular activities. So this is saying that the school board has the ultimate authority to determine if the group exists or not. You have the ultimate authority over it. Likewise, any group that is going on a extended field trip, out of state in particular, if you remember, that request comes to the board. The board has the ultimate authority to say no. One of the ones was the North Star. You could have said, no, we are not approving the North Star going to California. You have that authority to do that. You have the ultimate authority over that extracurricular group.
But sometimes we're not aware of, like, Mel indicated that there's a new badminton group or something.
Right.
Right, a lot of it's delegated.
Yeah, okay.
And then also, they're not an official activity unless they go through a cycle of the high school. So we didn't want one group to propose it, and when that group graduates, there is no interest in it. So it really doesn't become a recognized activity where they have the same status. They're kind of on a probation until we know we can sustain it.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Are there other questions? Let's go ahead and call the question then. All in favor of approving policy 705, excuse me, extracurricular groups and activities, so signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's approved. We've now exhausted the discussion and action agenda. Future meetings include regular board meetings on June 18th and July 2nd, a meeting of the Finance Committee on July 16th, and a Policy Committee meeting on July 2nd. And a meeting of the Employee Relations Committee next Monday. Thank you, Joe. Have I left anything out?
I think I said the wrong date tonight in my report. I said June 18th out of habit, but it's July 16th.
That's right, because it's every other month now.
Yep.
Anything else we need to add here? Before we take a motion to adjourn, I wanted to again thank the community members who came out tonight to speak to us. I think for many people it's not an easy thing to come and speak to, speak to a group like this, and I appreciate that people came out here and said that what was on their minds. Stuff like this is what makes democracy work, so thank you. Having said that, can we get a motion to adjourn, please? Mr. Fry moves to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Patterson. All in favor, so signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Cards from the Quail folks up here if anyone wants them. Whale card?
Whale card?
I want one, I'm really excited.
You got like 4.
I don't need 4. Steve's gonna help me with this, I have to recycle one.
Oh, I should do this.
7 a.m.?
7 a.m.
Fantastic.